Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, and thanks for joining us for Monday evening's edition of Alaska Weather on this 13th day of February 2017. Tomorrow's the 14th. Anyway, we've got snow advisory, winter weather advisory for more snow tonight across the Copper River Basin, and that's mostly for areas south of Gulkana for another 6 to 10 inches overnight tonight to fall on top of the 10 to 15 they've already picked up in some areas there. And again, that's out all night tonight until 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. And then we've got a winter weather advisory here for the Bristol Bay area for tonight. Winds 20 to 40 miles an hour, snow and blowing snow, reducing visibilities there, and a few more inches. And then there's a blizzard warning out for the Kuskokwim Delta and Nunivak Island. That for winds continue to gust 30 to 40 miles an hour there as well until midnight. Of course, visibility is down to less than a quarter mile for significant amounts of time. And then that'll start actually improving before midnight a little bit as the winds begin to come down, but the winds won't end altogether. And then for satellite imagery for today, you can see lots of moisture streaming from off the chart down there northward, actually coming up from about latitude of the Bay Area or so, streaming due north right up to the North Gulf Coast, continuing the heaviest precipitation through this area, spreading northward there, and a lot of cloudiness north of the Alaska Range, reaching Arctic Village, and then back to the west, just the opposite, trough right through here. So you've got cold air coming southward across the Bering Sea, dropping all the way down off the chart there, across the eastern Aleutians, and very cold air mass now about the core of the Arctic air, right over the Pribilofs and starting to shift southward toward the eastern Aleutians following the upper level low, but still cold outflow going on all the way back to the north there. And up along the Arctic coast, you can see a band edging eastward, a couple of them, another one on its heels, that bringing periods of flurries, patchy fog, cloudy skies there. But this light area here, that's where the skies are clear, and the temperatures this afternoon were into the 30s below zero around Umiat Airfield. Otherwise, as the flow comes off the ice edge, picks up a lot of moisture, snow blowing snow, St. Paul today as well as St. George, on down to the Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula. Conditions improve as you head west there with more clearing. And rolling this again, you can see not much of a eastward drift here, mostly everything coming northward. Another development down here to the south, that'll be coming northward. That's going to keep storm warnings or bring storm warnings in along the southeast coast tonight. Otherwise, for today, we have got the main low center there, southwest to Sitkinak, and slowly coming northward. Another front, actually the first one coming through, just sort of dissipating right through here. And the next one rolling up, and so warmer conditions again, another surge of warm air and heavy precipitation. Again, the snow, another 6 to 10 inches for portions of the Copper River Basin, and kind of a rain to snow or mixture there for Valdez after picking up 15 or so inches. And in some cases, Thompson Pass had up to 2 feet as of this morning, and also the heavier precipitation back here for the Susitna Valley. That snow advisory expected to end right about now, actually, or 6 p.m., and that was for the 4 to 8 inches that fell there. and not much west of the mountains. In fact, getting into clearing skies, colder, windier conditions back through here. Just some flurries there, St. Lawrence Island, on up to the Bering Strait, and then over the Chukchi Sea. And of course, with that narrow band slipping across the Arctic coast, snow showers, cool northerly winds for the Aleutians. And for tonight, that doesn't change much. Widespread area of light snow and clouds out here covering much of the Bering Sea. And again, the gusty winds with the blizzard conditions for the Yukon Delta, especially along the coast there out to Nunivak Island. Snow and blowing snow continues to the Pribilofs, right on down across the Fox Islands. Less wind, snow mostly confined to the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula there, but areas of light snow all across Bristol Bay up to Togiak, Dillingham, probably cutting off around King Salmon or so, and better conditions out west. Now front edging eastward here, you can see the lines increase, or the steepness of the gradient increases in advance of the front. So storm warnings out all along the southeast coast tonight, right on up in toward the eastern North Gulf Coast areas as that low center moves across Kodiak Island. Forecast to be just about on top of Fognak Island at 961 millibars later tonight. Breezy conditions, actually winter weather advisory out for the Koyukuk Valley tonight on up to the Brooks Range for northeast winds 20 to 30 miles an hour. Reducing visibilities and blowing snow up there. The additional snow really won't be that much. You'll just be blowing that around plus whatever's already on the ground. No change up there, same sort of pattern, weak surges of snow, flurries coming onto the western Arctic coast. And then the gale force winds through the Bering Strait into St. Lawrence Island. Mostly dry though, offshore flow there, and pretty chilly on the temperatures. Forecast for tomorrow, no change up here over the northwest part of the state, or really the north slope, maybe just lose the flurries there. And then the tight gradient along the Brooks Range with the front pushing northward. So probably see 20 to 40 mile an hour winds, strongest through the passes there, with blowing snow, reducing visibilities up in that area. South of the front though, precipitation really scattered and light across the Tanana Valley into the 40-mile country. Maybe a little bit of enhancement still on the southern slopes of the eastern Alaska Range there, northern Copper River Basin, and then south to north flow keeps it wet from the Yakutat area, actually from the north and southeast coast all the way into Prince William Sound, mostly in the form of rain now, even to Portage and probably, or even to Whittier and probably Portage. Mixed here possible over Cook Inlet, same thing for Kodiak Island. This low pulling northward, so look for some pretty gusty winds as that passes north throughout the day tomorrow, especially through Turnagain Arm, higher elevations at East Anchorage, from Turnagain Arm on up to Palmer. Winds will be east or southeast, maybe gusting over 60 miles per hour as that thing slips on up. But it's not, doesn't look like it's going to be the strongest type of a Chinook wind. It won't be the branch breaking, power line snapping type that could occur, but definitely see an increase in the winds along with warmer temperatures. Out down here, the surface low associated with the upper level low there, keeping snow going over the Alaska Peninsula, but not too windy again on up into Bristol Bay. Strongest winds back across the Pribilofs, down into the Fox Islands. Snow, blowing snow there all day long, and then drying out, but gale force northerlies, 40 knots there across St. Lawrence Island through the Bering Strait, and you can see pretty windy conditions again, as I mentioned, continuing on the west side there. Lots of snow showers out west, no big storms at all out that way. And then for Wednesday, we've got this system down here, tracks sort of northward here, or splits actually in other center forms, so the whole mess moves across the Panhandle as an open trough, and that's going to keep periods of rain in the forecast there, but winds will be much lighter. Now you've got some weak ridging here just to the west, but still a lot of moisture out there left behind. Mixture of rain or snow from the North Gulf Coast. It'll be lighter and more occasional than what it has been. Chance of snow actually maybe into northern Cook Inlet, the Sitna Valley, as some colder air finally slips on in. Areas of light snow scattered across the Kenai Peninsula, Kamishak Bay, southern Cook Inlet, in toward Iliamna Lake. And then this frontal system, kind of a either or there for the rain or snow, depending on the snowfall levels, with that southeast wind for Kodiak Island, but that'll probably be mostly snow back to the west and then diminishing. No change out here, still northeast winds. Wind pattern not going to change a whole lot over the Bering Sea over the next couple of days, all the way down to the Aleutians, except it'll be lighter here for the eastern Aleutians and western Alaska Peninsula. And really not much wind again out for the central and western areas, as well as no storminess showing up out to the west at all. Everything Looks like this is the strongest feature on the charts. So going to temperatures this afternoon up into the mid-50s, 54 there at Sitka, Kawak up to 50 degrees, and I believe Petersburg, which didn't make it on the chart, they were 51. 46 in Juneau, Elfin Cove, 45 up at Yakutat, 42 Cordova, and Valdez up to 34. I saw they carried some rain in one of their observations this afternoon. And then quite a range here, 33 at McCarthy to 18 at Gunsight, 4 Northway up to 20, Delta 19 at Fairbanks, 2 below there at Tanana, minus 15 Arctic Village, 1 Bettles, minus 30 up there at Umiat Airfield, and 33 below there at Nuiqsut, otherwise in a place formerly known as Barrow, Alaska, 5 above 0, 2 at Cape Lisburne, and a couple of 11s here at Kotzebue and Buckland. Otherwise, Shishmaref had 0, 9 White Mountain and Nome, and then just single numbers here across all the southwest interior, up the Yukon River Valley to Galena, 4 degrees at Macoriac, 6 Savunga, and just 12 at St. Paul there, 15 over at St. George, upper teens, lower 20s, Alaska Peninsula, mostly in the teens all the way up into the greater King Salmon area, 30 degrees for the central western Aleutians. Lows tonight, 20s, lower 30s out that way. Not much change for the Pribilofs, near 0 St. Lawrence Island. And I can see a pretty good contrast here from southeast to northwest, falling below 0, but not all that far below 0 until you get north of the Brooks Range, and it'll be in the mid-minus 30s with milder conditions out toward the coast. Lows in the 40s for the Panhandle tonight, upper 30s for the North Gulf Coast. And the highs tomorrow, 40s maybe, all the way into the Susitna Valley there with maybe Whittier Portage up into the lower 40s as well as Girdwood. Mid to upper 40s again, maybe some areas reaching 50 there across the southeast coast. And for flying weather, lots of IFR here from the Pribilofs, Bering Sea, right along the southwest coast. So that's going to be an improvement late tonight from the blizzard conditions out there now, or in the forecast. Also along the west side of the east side of the western Alaska Range, IFR, Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound. And so that's starting to press in toward the Panhandle. And tomorrow that extends from about Port Alexander northward across the northern areas there, Juneau on up towards Skagway, westward across Prince William Sound, downsloping Chinook-type winds, keeping it VFR from roughly Anchor Point all the way up to Palmer and into the southern Susitna Valley. IFR again, eastern Alaska Range, eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, a swath here from the eastern Aleutians, northeastward there up across the Yukon Flats to the eastern Arctic coast. Anaktuvik though in Adigan, or Anaktuvik will be VFR, Adigan starting out marginal, becoming VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, same pattern, IFR, lowest conditions on the eastern approaches, better out to the west. And for, we get out of the way, for Rainy, marginal VFR, lowest conditions, or possible IFR there on the eastern approach. Windy, same pattern as today. Lowest conditions south, probably VFR there through the northern or out the northern entrance. And then for Isabel, IFR becoming marginal. Looks like Mentasta will be VFR generally, still a chance of some marginal stuff south side. And for Tanita, occasionally marginal. Portage, IFR. Chilcoot and White, another IFR day over that way. And for the freezing levels late tonight, at the surface here right near Kodiak Island, that cold air plunging southward here to the west, warm air pushing northward to the east with 6,000 feet there across the southern southeast coast. And as far as icing goes, above about 3,000 feet here, areas of light rime icing, interior Koyukuk Valley onto the northeast, and then a broad area here from the southeast coast above about 6,000 feet westward across southern Alaska all the way out to the Pribilofs. Some of that slipping on back down into the eastern Aleutians. And looking at the jet stream, again, strong well to the south here, and then it takes a turn to the north, farther east now than it was. Right up across the Panhandle tomorrow at about 140 knots at 33,000 feet. And the 9,000 foot winds pretty strong here, right across the southeast coast from the Queen Charlottes, but dropping back to 25 to 40 there into the Yukon, and then lighter winds just back to the west. Southerlies 20 for the Gulf of Alaska, kicking up to 35 knots in across the Gulf the coastal mountains. Northeast 35 to 50 knots for the Koyukuk Valley. And into the Bering Strait areas, Chukchi 40 to 50 knot winds, more of a 30 to 40 knot wind here by the time you get to the Pribilofs. Northwest 10 to 25 for the eastern Aleutians. Same pattern more or less for 3,000 feet here. We've got northeast 20 to 35, 50-knot winds, Bering Strait dropping back to 30 there for the extreme western Arctic coast, and then 35 to 50-knot winds for the Panhandle, lighter winds as you head west. And for turbulence, moderate chop here, mostly Port Alexander, across Prince of Wales Island into the Dixon entrance area. North of there, light to isolated moderate chop. Occasional moderate chop here from the Susitna Valley over the Talkeetnas, a little bit to the northeast, a more widespread area there from the Brooks Range into the Bering Strait, all the way down to Nunivak Island, and then along the eastern Aleutians over to about Atka. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the ice edge and the marine forecasts.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary O'Connor with the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. Thank you to Alaska Public Media for allowing us to bring you Hangar Flying. This evening, we are pleased to have David Karalunas back on Hangar Flying. David is the policy lead with the Federal Aviation Administration's Compliance Philosophy Focus Team. Welcome back, David.
Thanks, Mary.
So on our last show, we talked a bit about the evolution of the compliance philosophy and what it means for the average general aviation pilot. I'd like to get something right out there in the open and ask, the compliance philosophy doesn't mean that the FAA is giving out free passes or going easy on pilots that break regulations, right?
Right. Unfortunately, some folks in the aviation press have referred to it as the kinder, gentler FAA, but in fact we see it completely differently. You know, in the old days, if someone committed a violation of a rule, we may have written an enforcement case and then handed that off to the legal system, and in flight standards kind of considered that action completed. But in fact, the compliance philosophy requires us to focus on the behavior, the training, the conditions that allowed that deviation to happen. And whether we write an enforcement case or not, we still have to continue to address the underlying problem and get that fixed and have this permanent lasting change for improved safety. So in some ways it's a higher standard than it was before.
And it's definitely more work for the inspectors because they're looking at the problem from a systemic approach and trying to fix the problem rather than trying to fix the individual who might have made a bad decision.
Actually, both solutions may be part of the answer. There are, things in the simple mistakes category, or an individual that's got diminished skills or a lack of knowledge may just need to be addressed with that person. But certainly, as we aggregate information, the de-identified information from all of our safety systems, we look for those systemic problems. And certainly in the air carrier or commercial world, within companies and across companies, we can look for systemic problems as well.
So in talking about individual actions, is compliance action the same as a corrective action?
They're related, but they are different. In our policy, we define those two terms, and compliance action is what the FAA does, specifically to my work with flight standards, what the Flight Standards Organization does to return someone to or assure that they remain in compliance, and also to share information about concerns or recommendations or best practices in the absence of an actual regulatory deviation. The corrective action is the piece that the certificate holder does. So in all segments of aviation, the FAA is involved in surveillance and oversight, but we don't actually fly the airplanes or fix them or make them or operate in the NAS. So it's the folks doing that that have to make the corrective action, and all the things that you do to get yourself back into and stay in compliance would be corrective actions.
So what type of corrective action should a pilot expect if they have had an event? Have those changed at all?
We've changed some of the terminology, and we've expanded the use of some tools, specifically remedial training. But the things that we've done in the past and have long had latitude in policy to do, we're just emphasizing those to a greater extent today as the starting point to solve problems. So we may see increased uses of counseling, both oral and written counseling, on-the-spot corrections, just fixing a discrepancy right there and moving on, and certainly for knowledge and skill deficiencies, remedial training, for the general aviation folks is the key way to get that accomplished.
So speaking of remedial actions, are 709 rides a thing of the past, or is that still going to be a possibility?
Yeah, FAA still has the same authority as always to re-examine any certificate under 44709 of the statute. However, that is not a compliance action, nor is it an enforcement action. It's a separate process to determine whether or not a certificate holder has the qualifications and competence to hold the certificate. And what we describe in our policy and our training for our workforce is that if the inspector and a certificate holder and airman working together can identify a particular deficiency, let's say runway signage and markings for somebody that committed a runway incursion of some kind, then that is eligible to be covered by remedial training. But if it's not possible to determine what the deficiency was, either because the airman won't communicate with us or there's just not enough information, then re-examination under 44709 is likely required in order for the inspector to determine what to do next.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification, because I know a lot of pilots feel like it's an action taken against them, but it's really just to help them and show that they do have the skills necessary to hold that certificate. Well,
and it's the FAA's obligation to the public to determine that the folks out there do have the skills and competence to hold the certificates they have.
All righty. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate that clarification. We still have a lot to talk about with the new compliance philosophy, so if you don't mind, I'm going to have you back one more time.
Certainly.
All right. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching Hangar Flying. We hope you've learned something about the new compliance philosophy, and we hope you'll join us next time. Until then, fly safely.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis for today. Stuff right up to St. Matthew Island now, so it's made quite an advance westward and southward from 1 week ago today. You can see a significant amount there into Bristol Bay, Cook Inlet as well, and really not a lot of change with the winds tending to come down here out over the Bering Sea over the next several days. Probably won't see any significant changes at all. For the southeast coast, after the storm warnings tonight, those will drop back to pretty good gales tomorrow out of the south-southeast. Gale warnings out for Clarence Strait, the small craft advisories, central waters to just 15 for Northern Lynn Canal. And those drop back to even lighter there for Northern Lynn Canal. Southwest 30 knots on the north coast, south 20 to 25 south coast, and winds dropping off pretty good now, 15 to 20 knots for the central and southern inside waters. And for Prince William Sound, gale warnings tomorrow, but strongest winds in the morning, diminishing in the afternoon. Same thing going on here for the North Gulf Coast. So go 40 knots, seas about 20 feet on average. Small craft advisory southerlies for the Western Gulf Coast and the Barrens, and southerlies at 30 for Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, small craft advisories and brisk wind advisories, or north of the Forelands, brisk wind advisories, south of the Forelands, small crafts. And then for Wednesday, Northern Cook Inlet, light westerly winds, northeast 15, down south of the Forelands, east 15. Small craft advisories there along the eastern zone here, Kodiak Island. 20-knot winds from the North Gulf Coast, now just southeast 15 for Prince William Sound. Bristol Bay, same forecast there, southeast 15. Light variable winds tomorrow here in the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Westerlies 20 on the south side from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, southeast 25. And then for Wednesday, brisk wind advisories for Bristol Bay out of the northeast, northerlies at 20. South of the peninsula, west winds 25 knots. Turn southerly here as you approach Sitkinak up to about 30 knots with 14-foot seas. For the Aleutians, eastern areas, 30 to 35 knot winds with freezing spray all the way back to Adak, small craft advisories, and lighter winds out west again, which continues into Wednesday, more of a north-northeast direction though, but continued quite light from what they could be this time of the year. And then small craft advisories here from Atka all the way over to Unalaska Island. For the southwest coast, 35 knot winds north of Nunivak Island. North 45, a pretty windy day coming up for St. Lawrence Island on back to the Bering Strait, southward to St. Matthew Island. Minimum gales for the Pribilofs. For Wednesday, really not a lot of change going on. A couple of pretty similar days. coming up for the entire Bering Sea with gales just about everywhere, although bring it down to 40 knots there for St. Lawrence Island. Arctic coast, eastern Beaufort Sea coast there, northwest 15. Northwest 15 on the west side, and then we got gales from Wales up to Cape Thompson, and then brisk wind advisories from there up to Cape Beaufort. And no change there on Wednesday, about the same pattern out here in the west, or it is the same pattern. Northerlies 15, central west side, turning northwest, and then west at about 20 there toward demarcation point. And tonight again, blizzard warning here for the Kuskokwim Delta. Northeast winds up to 40 miles an hour in gusts. That'll create areas of blowing snow with the additional snowfall, reducing visibilities to a quarter mile or less at times. And that same pattern right out here to the Pribilofs, although you don't have a blizzard warning out there, but snow and blowing snow extend down across the eastern Aleutians. Lighter winds here for Bristol Bay, and low center tracking northward here. A lot of warm air moisture continues to zone in on the eastern North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula. Storm warnings, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast tonight, all the way down the southeast coast as that gradient tightens as the front edges eastward. And so will the rainfall increase as well. And mixed conditions right up into the Susitna Valley with only flurries getting north of the Alaska Range into the Tanana Valley. Tomorrow, that front edges eastward here, down to the gales there for the coast, and periods of rain heavy at times there for the Panhandle. Just areas of light snow here south of this front. The heavier weather up there, northern Koyukuk Valley across the eastern Brooks Range, and then continuing back out here, although the blizzard warning ends for the Yukon Delta and Nunivak Island tonight, and also for Bristol Bay, the snow advisory ends. But tomorrow looking something like this, and then the next day that trough swings eastward there. Less wind, lighter precipitation for the Panhandle. Chance of snow, northern Cook Inlet, Susitna Matanuska Valley, areas of back to the southwest, and then an increasing chance for Kodiak Island.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.